way of like labeling packaging for farms was design a label for one product, have a print company make 5,000 labels or whatever of that, spend a lot of money, spend like 50 cents a label or something along those lines, and then be stuck with those and have to use those, so your packaging costs are really high, having to charge more. We wanted to do something that was super customizable. If something changed, we weren't worried about having to use up those labels. We could print them on demand. So our labels cost us about a penny a piece, and so and they look really good, but they're simple. And so I think that's the balance. Is we want everything to kind of follow that, that kind of thought process.
Eric, how important has branding been to your farm and really setting yourself apart?
It's been huge. So, I mean, from the beginning, we wanted to spend the time and create that brand. And so we worked with a friend who's local that does some amazing work, and she, put together not only a typography and that logo, but then a series of icons and that, so we could use from all of our kind of packaging needs that. And just we want everything that goes out, whether it's a bag of lettuce or a dozen eggs, to have some continuity with that brand, so that it's recognizable at kind of that first glance.
When you say, or when you look at your competitors in this space, people you're selling against, to whether in the restaurants, at the farmers market, would you say you're the premium product in terms of how you're pricing? And then do you need that brand to reflect that pricing?
I think we're competitive, but we're on the higher end of that. I think we charge, we base our costs or our prices on what the cost of growing food. So we're never going to sacrifice or grow at a loss just because that's what people think it's worth. We're going to take the time to re-educate them on what it actually costs and why they should pay it. But yeah, we do, because we are a little bit more of a premium. We want to do little things to add value in the consumer's eye. So whether it's stamping each egg in a dozen eggs, it's just a split second for each egg that we do. So it only adds a couple of minutes to our daily egg washing and packaging to stamp all those. But when the customer opens that up, it's it's really special to them. They think it's a really cool kind of boutique thing, and there's a lot of Instagram photos as a result of our eggs because people want to share that.
And what advice would you have for farmers that are either new or existing, but they just haven't paid much attention to building their own brand? What are some tips?
Yeah, I mean, I think spending the time from the beginning so that you create that brand, as simple as it can be. Like all of our packaging, we try to be not cluttered. We want a simple, clean look, but we designed everything around so that a little bit of design goes a long way. And so we don't need to. We create all of our labels to have interchangeable text so that we're not having to redo a label every single time. So you can do things really simply, but still like really tastefully, and that even goes to like your market display. Like ours is very simple and clean, but colorful, and we get compliments constantly at markets about it. But we stay away from like those lug bins and things like that are just easy to load up and throw on a table, but they just don't look as good. And so we're so visual as consumers, and that, so we want people to to really enjoy that process as well. So it's really simple.
Do you think your brand has to reflect kind of who you are, your belief in what you're trying to present? I mean, I look around your farm, it's clean, it's simple the way you're doing things. Your brand coincidentally matches that. Is your brand based on your personality? How would you say you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, my personality is very very detail oriented, on the borderline OCD, but I want everything to have organization in place. Otherwise, I feel out of sync, out of rhythm, and that too. So our farm design with flow and being kind of that modular and very organized and grid-like. We want our brand to do the same thing again. So it's not so busy and cluttered that people. It's just kind of overload, but it's simple and clean, and just has that nice design touch.
Recently you moved your farm from a previous location to the location where you're at now, but the brand of your farm was your brand. So you're able to move that brand with the location of the farm. How critical was it to have that brand that you could move when you had to move the physical farm?
Yeah, it was super important. When we went from farm managers to then starting our own farm business on that same one property, it was important from day one to slowly start to transition that brand to ours, so that if we ever did move, that people weren't confused with the old and the new and that, but they associated what we had created with wherever we are in that. So yeah, it's been huge as far as where it doesn't matter where we're at, and we want people just to recognize that quick look and be able to or know what we are.
When customers look at your product, your brand, what do you think comes to mind? Is it fresh? Is it local? Is it quality? Is it uniqueness?
That's a good question. We want it to look like a premium, like it's worth every penny that they're spending on ours. The vegetables speak for themselves, the quality of them, the flavor, the nutrient density, but it's just those details we want them to feel really good about. We want them to be like excited or proud of what they're doing, and supporting local, going to the farmers markets and that, and to be a different experience than if they were just to go to the grocery store and that. And so I think all these things kind of build on that. But again, we just want to bring more attention to like that small scale, that local and that. And so it's getting people excited about eating, which is something we all do. So it's really important.
If you had to fight over branding at all, Ben Hartman talks about this concept of one form of waste is producing something your customers won't pay for. So at some point you can push past the limits of where branding applies and create massive labels on everything that the customers don't even care about. Have you had any of that challenge?
From day one, we wanted to keep things super simple and very customizable so that we weren't spending a lot of money. I think the traditional way of like labeling for packaging for farms was design a label for one product, have a print company make 5,000 labels or whatever of that, spend a lot of money, spend like 50 cents a label or something along those lines, and then be stuck with those and have to use those, so your packaging costs are really high, having to charge more, and then I think you're really inefficient in that way, and you're making your customers pay for something that really they don't care about a 50-cent label at that point. So we wanted to do something that was super customizable. If something changed, we weren't worried about having to use up those labels. We could print them on demand. So our labels cost us about a penny a piece, and so and they look really good, but they're simple. And so I think that's the balance. Is we want everything to kind of follow that that kind of thought process. When we did our brand, I was like, I want a square label. And my buddy owns a label company that does all the UPS labels, and so he had these giant like label machines that they use for like big commercial applications, which was great because it actually had a rewinder too, so it would like print and then rewind on a new spool, so that you could take out that and then pull it on a bar. But like the quality of the image wasn't great, and I didn't have the money to spend on the fancy one, so I ended up going with this for a couple $100. It cuts as it goes, so it's just a continuous roll that cuts by 4x4, because that's just, I wanted something. Everybody, as soon as we started doing that and we were doing the 2x4, then I was like, okay, everybody's gonna have this. It's gonna look, so let's distinguish ourselves a little bit more. And so the only downside is it's not on a roll. There's stacks. We print them as we go and what we need, but it's just, this is blank. We designed, and then we just type over that. Our wholesale, and then our CSA. Since the CSA is
retail, wholesale, CSA.
Yep, you got it. This is more a subscription, so we're a little bit more playful, add the more icons and that, make it a little bit more visual for them, but it's customizable, the week number and then the content. So each week I'll print out the number we need, and I'll have the contents in there and whatever week it is. So this is today. And then we go through with our CSA list. If they order eggs, or flowers, we check off the appropriate boxes, we write the member's name and their pickup location, and then those go on the box. So that allows us to code where everything is supposed to go, and it's specific to that customer because they can, do those eggs or the flowers. And then we need to make some updates. Like right now we put a number in the top left corner because we're doing so many, we have so many locations. We want to know, okay, if this location has 7 shares going to that location, for example, then we'll write a 7. That way when we're making those deliveries, we're counting them out, and so we don't forget one if it gets shifted around or whatever. So again, really simple, right? But it's a little detail. Whether it's a wholesale order or a CSA, it's always in this top right corner. And so you can see actually under there's our wholesale labels. So this box has 4 labels. So this we've been able to recycle this box 4 times, which was why we don't use the thickest cardboard. We don't use wax boxes, and we still get really great reuse. This box cost me about $2 a piece, which is still it's a lot of money when you start adding that up. But I've got 80% of our restaurants trained to break them down and put them in the corner, and we pick them up every week. And we've let our CSA members train the same way. The CSA box, please return box. It says right on there. Again, simple, clean, very subtle, but
so when you get a custom box like this made with this stamp, you have to pay them for the die initially to get the right.
Right, and some box companies, they'll have a stock of different boxes, and so in those you wouldn't pay for. But we wanted this specific size box, and so they didn't have it, so we had to give them samples, and they made a prototype, and then they made a die cutting plate that stamped out these out of cardboard, and then they glue the seam. And then they come blank to us, and we just stamp them ourselves. So we're supposed to actually get a delivery today of a pallet of 500 more boxes.
Makes it easy.
Yeah, and then we just store them upstairs in bundles, and we pull them down as needed, and then we do deliveries, and we bring back a giant stack, and then reuse them. And they start to get beat up, but our wholesale. Like this is the restaurant way, and the customer, like that, and then it rips that.
Just powers it open.
And so we don't want that. So we're gonna trying to okay, push this way, fold, that whole thing, because those little details help us reuse them. But
if a box like this comes clean for say $2, how much do you think it's going to cost to get stuff printed on it?
It's actually pennies once you pay for the plate. It's almost not any more money. But you're going to spend, depending on the size of, it's like a big stamp when they're doing the production. So it's all, the way I understand it is the big rolls or sheets of cardboard, and it's essentially a big stamp, and it's stamping, and then it's punching out the shape, and then they're gluing it all together. So it's all automated, and so it costs them really almost no more time, just a little bit of ink. So depending on how intricate you get, you can spend $300 to $800 a plate. So it's expensive for that initial, but we're also hand stamping right now, and so there's labor there. So we're just not ready to drop the money on that. But
so when you go to printing, you pay to create the plate, which has the artwork, the stamp on it.
You own it.
Take it wherever you want.
Exactly.
And then going forward, you're just paying off that plate over time, and eventually the actual ink stamping part of it is not much.
Exactly. Yeah. So it does definitely pay for itself. And this is the alternate to go into I think International Paper. I think does a majority of all the produce boxes in California and Yuma, and but you have to have it's a crazy minimum, right? 5,000 or 10,000 boxes, which I don't have the storage or the cash to just drop that kind of money. So we buy the pallet, which is about 500 boxes, and keeps it just under $2 a piece for these. And then we have one that's twice as tall, but same footprint, so they stack nicely, which is also really important that everything is the same and stackable. And that one's $250. So we want to use those double tall ones because our cost, we fit double the amount of stuff, but the cost is less than double, so it makes sense.
And you're pretty systematized in how you do stuff. So when it comes time to pack CSA, do you assemble all the boxes first?
Yeah. Well,
and if they're blank, do you stamp them once they're assembled, or how do you do that?
If we have to break into, again, we're trying to reuse them as much as possible. So hopefully we have a backlog of reused boxes that are already stamped. But if we have to pull down another bundle of 25s, other bundle, somebody will take that over while they're flat and broken down and just stamp, flip, stamp, and then just go through that whole bundle. And then, we'll assemble them. So we'll make them all, and then we'll put our bag liner in them, like right here. So part of keeping an unwaxed box protected, and also just food safety and what's required from moisture and all that, is we do use these vented liners, so they have holes punched in them so it breathes, but it still it holds the moisture and keeps things fresher than just dropping in the box alone. So we'll do that, and then we can fill as needed, and then once they're filled with produce, depending on the item, like greens and that, we'll use these moisture papers that do a good job of either wicking away moisture or holding in some moisture. And so if we're putting in something that's still kind of wet, we'll put those papers on the bottom of the box before we start. Or if it's like greens and that one we want to protect them, then we'll set them on top of the greens, and then we'll just fold this over and then close that up. And then that's sealed up, and we've actually had a really good success with keeping things a little bit fresher in shelf life for the wholesale by using those papers, which are, again, pennies from a vegetable grower supply, I think.
You see some farms use like reusable totes, plastic. What are your thoughts on that as somebody who does this?
We tried doing that with certain customers, ones that we had a very really close connection with, but the reality is we still lost totes, and they're expensive, and at the time we were using these Canadian food grade gray, and they range from $20 to $30 a piece. And when people, especially restaurants, and you bring them really nice totes with produce in them, and they really like them, and they're like, oh, they want them, they would start using them, we find them other places. And so we try not to do that. We work with a brewery where we bring 500 pounds of this or that, so huge quantities, and I don't want to burn through 40, 50 boxes of that. And so in that case, I'll use totes because it just doesn't make sense, and it's usually heavy stuff, and so we want it to hold up a little bit better. But then I'm making a note that they have those totes, or I'll even put a core charge on the invoices and just say hey, you'll get credited back as soon as I get these back. And that's just kind of holding them accountable for those. And so that works really well. In fact, funny story, when we started our boxes, it was a big investment when we went to buying our own boxes, making them and all that. And so I actually, from the beginning of those, I charged everybody a core charge of $3 per box for everything we delivered. It was on the invoice. And so every cardboard box they got, there was a core charge of $3. And then when they brought them back, we made a note and we gave them a credit back on that. And some people were okay with it. Some people didn't really get it because nobody else did it. And honestly, as we grew, it got to be just too cumbersome to try to track all that. And the last thing you want to do is they gave you back boxes and you screw up and not give them their credit and that kind of thing. And so
over $3.
Over $3. So we got to a point where we could build that into the cost of things. But since we still get 80% or so back, it all works out.
One thing that I love that Eric's doing here with these labels, continuous improvement, trying to eliminate other problems within the system. For example, on his restaurant wholesale label, he was having problems with the restaurants writing in Sharpie on the boxes, and ideally he wants to reuse the boxes, so they would write the date or use first on it. So he started writing the date on the label. He's eventually going to print the date on the label. Another thing they would do at the restaurants is write the contents of what was in the box in Sharpie on the box, and that doesn't look so good if you want to reuse the box and maintain that branding. So he's gone to adding the contents onto the label itself. Continuous improvement, observation, getting feedback on what the customer's doing, and trying to prevent downstream problems upstream by doing things like this. I love the idea of it, and it's one thing Eric does well here at Steadfast.